lawsuit over that Louisiana law that requires the 10 Commandments be displayed in all public school classrooms in the state, saying the display is unconstitutional. The plaintiffs, they include parents who are rabbis, pastors, reverends, Jewish, Christian, Unitarian, Universalist, and non-religious as well. Basically, they're saying the display of the Christian 10 Commandments pressures students to adopt, quote, the state's favored religious scripture. Take a listen to this.
But it sends a dangerous and harmful message to children and the community that anyone who doesn't believe in the state's preferred scripture does not belong.
Marissa Parra following this for us and joining us now. Walk us through kind of some of the main arguments that they're making here, Marissa.
Hey, Yasmin, good to be on with you. This is something we've been following since last week when that was officially signed by Governor Landry. And so what we heard tonight was what we've been expecting. We had heard last week that they would be filing this lawsuit. And so now we got a little bit more of a sense of what their arguments were. We went through the complaints and, of course, we heard it. And you're going to hear from one of the plaintiffs in just a moment. But in part, they argue in this complaint and in that media call we heard not long ago that this violates long-standing precedent set by the Supreme Court of the United States, and that it also interferes with parents' right to direct their children's religious education and upbringing. And you're going to hear from one of those families in just a moment. But one thing that I thought was interesting, Yasmin, is that one of the lawyers that is a part of this case saying that this lawsuit was filed not just on behalf of the parents, but also the children. Take a listen.
Personally, I believe in a Christian version of the Ten Commandments. But the text of the Ten Commandments mandated by House Bill 71, even though Christocentric, presents language that runs counter to important Presbyterian values, such as inclusion and equality.
Now, something I also thought was interesting in terms of the timing. So the law is effective already. This was signed last week. And so in terms of when the law is required to be upheld, that is, these classrooms in Louisiana required to display the 10 Commandments, right, that is effective come 2025, Yasmin. So the hope here, now that they've filed this, they're hoping they're going to have a hearing. They're seeking an injunction. And their hope is that they can get this overturned, if you will, in some way, shape, or form to stop this effectively before that deadline of 2025, Yasmin.
So two things here. If you're looking at 2025, then are we looking at January of 2025? So when kids return to the classroom in 2 months or so, this still will not be in effect. And with that all being said, are we likely headed towards the Supreme Court with this thing?
Great questions and important ones. So you could absolutely see classrooms before 2025 implementing this, but it is not required until the start of 2025. So the idea being you can have classrooms without it at the start of winter break in December, but by the time they return, if everything remains as it is exactly right now, Yasmin, they would be required. All of those public classrooms would be required to display the 10 Commandments on some sort of large poster-sized display. And then regarding the Supreme Court of the United States, it's another important thing here. We talked about that precedent that was set roughly 40 years ago, Stone versus Graham in Kentucky. And so what we could see this rise to the level of Supreme Court. And the idea here is that this is a violation of the precedent that was set. And so there is some thought that maybe this in general was signed with the hope of it rising to the Supreme Court. And this is a conservative Supreme Court, so there is some question as to how that would go if it rises to the level. And of course, we'll stay on top of it every step of the way, Yasmin.
We know you will. Marissa Parra, thank you.